His Jacarandas Took Me Home by Kaye Christensen of Q 2439. Narrated by Janine Penfold. Pulling up in front of the tiny fibro cottage that was my family home, I knew Mum would be on her front porch watching for me, ensuring that I wouldn't be kept waiting. That's Mum. She and Dad built this home 54 years previously when Dad came home from his World War II soldiering. I'd lived my young life here before love and marriage took me to farmhouses and acres. This cottage holds my childhood dreams and stories. Mum lost her war-torn man far too early, but she immersed herself in friendships and family, and whenever I visited, we've chatted and laughed of all things past, present and ahead. She worked like a trooper at everything she took on, without a thought about her age. I too can relate to a wonderfully busy life, loving husband, happy babies, working towards our future, and then a retirement at the beach. Planning's what we do. Today, though, Mum and I were off shopping. My almost completed new home needed bedding and furniture. She loved being involved in the styling decisions, saying that she'd been born too soon. She was loving life right now and wanted more. I laughed, saying we'd be chatting for many years yet, and she smiled towards another 16. My husband was part of our building team, and while Mum and I handled the interior, he also raised magnificent gardens. He'd retained the tractor and other necessary tools to landscape our 5 acres. We'd left farming to work in town jobs, visit grandchildren more often, and have a social life in our older age. But at present, these gardens were his favourite project, soon becoming driveway avenues of tipicina and liquid amber trees. Wisteria crawled over pergolas, and stepping stones allowed for grandchildren walks that brushed past azaleas to skip across the arch bridge over the fish pond. Here, our beloved kookaburras occasionally enjoyed lunching on our fish, necessitating a trip to the pet shop. I agreed with his plant choices, but, loving their gentle purple spring flowers, I lobbied for some jacarandas. Mentioning their somewhat straggly look meant that he didn't particularly like them. However, 5 hopeful bloomers found themselves perusing the second driveway. After more than 2 years, everything thrived. Except those 5 confounded jacarandas. I felt I'd somehow jinxed their success. "These bloomin' jacarandas, Darl, they haven't reacted to anything I've tried." I smiled, nodding agreement, whilst he persevered further. Sadly, he passed away a short while later, interrupting the happiness of many lives. Our children and Mum came often, where we walked and talked his gardens. It was then that I revisited those hardships that Mum had endured. I needed to learn from her, to find a way to cope and age without him. Years arrived and left. Increasing my work hours helped me adjust to my being alone, and his jacarandas and I battled along until retirement turned into my best option. I travelled the area during those challenging years to look around, visit friends or stay a weekend. But this time, I drove to the beach town we'd forever talked about. I'd made the decision. I sold up, packed up, and now had a removalist van following behind. A few weeks earlier, I'd endured a tedious garage sale to do the recommended downsizing, so it hadn't taken much time for the removalist chaps to pack up my beautiful husband-built home. They'd look bewildered, though, when asked to carefully place 2 special things among my household belongings. Therein sat 2 potted, sad-looking jacarandas. The unload was managed efficiently, the men very carefully placing my furniture in the rental I'd taken on. Alas, One of the pots had tipped over, sustaining a long crack, reaffirming my thoughts of having jinxed them. I had the feeling that, although they'd apologised and made every effort with them, the men really thought the trees needed to be released to a compost machine. I guess I'd allowed the jacarandas to become overly important. They were playing some sort of mind game with me. So I must at least try to win. Armed with extra strong ceramic glue, I repaired, trimmed, fed, and watered both plants with fingers crossed. I found new friends, met up with old ones, and dropped in on elderly aunties living nearby. Family visited, and I took up beach walking. But time kind of stood still for a while as I continued my searching for ways to handle the ups and downs of my life. After carrying boxes of that life to 4 houses in 6 years, in the town I'd chosen, I finally realised what I needed. 18 years after our first build, I needed to build again, to design a home just for me. It's not easy in your retirement age, especially tackling large projects alone. Well-meaning family and friends lamented, but I pushed on. I'd looked at a few blocks before coming across one where swamp animals thrived. A large goanna stood resplendent, and kangaroos bounded by, all accompanied by butterflies, birdsong, and dragonflies. The block's overgrown sloped exterior watched over an ancient wetland. I knew immediately I needed this block. I'd tame its wild slope into a garden where the swamp families, croaking frogs and rustling trees would provide an amazing backdrop. My exterior terrace garden certainly did appear, and I admit to some moments of, what have I started? To more than once being surprised by red-belly black snakes, and to taking a broom to the goanna who wanted my chicken's eggs. But after exceedingly tough work, the tangled vines and weeds became a place for bees and beauty. My haven. With picturesque swampland garden views, my home satisfies, suits me perfectly. Last October, sipping tea from my alfresco, I knew my man would be proud. His 20-year-old jacarandas, released from cracked pots into my terraced garden the previous year, reached for the sky, blooming victorious. Like me, they too had been searching. Seeing their first-time purple flowers was pure perfection. My heart simply skipped a beat, rejuvenating my 75-year-old self. The end.